Every night in my dreams, I see you, I feel you. If you didn't know this about me, I actually really love karaoke. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm not particularly good at it, but I really enjoy doing it. And another thing that you might not know is anything about my game at all, but today we're going to be announcing something kind of fun, and that is karaoke is coming to my game, actually. So watch on to see how that works out. And by the way, hello, my name is Jace, aka Gemballs. I'm a solo game developer living here in Sweden, and I'm working on my dream little project. I have no IQ, I mean that, but also I have no idea how it's gonna turn out. Also be sure to stay to the very end of this video because it's gonna be a special demonstration of the feature, right? Special for you, the folks who stick around to the end, okay? So a few weeks back, I started working on a karaoke rhythm minigame for my game on stream. So people who tune in live on Twitch or live here on YouTube may have seen some of it, and you guys may have been leaked that this was coming. But actually this past week, I've done a bunch of work on it off stream, so that no one knows how this has all ended up. And that's hopefully gonna be what's gonna be a fun little payoff for you all here today on this video. So yeah, what I'd like to do is walk you all through how this sort of came to be, what the development of it was like, what the feature looks like from conception to, you know, it's not final because the game's not done, but, you know, to a much more complete state. So that, like, you know, folks of you out there who aren't game developers might find this interesting, and those of you who are game developers, specifically Godot developers, might actually find something handy in here as well. So anyway, we get started, right? First things first, we need some arrows, because I'm gonna model this rhythm game kind of like DDR, okay? So we need some arrows. I whipped up some arrows in Sprite. They're kind of cute. There they are, pretty nice. And then yeah, just plop them on the screen. Easy as that, just put them there. We're done, right? Super simple. So as you can see here, each arrow has its own lane, and I make them fall from the top of the screen. The arrows currently have some kind of target hit time that I've just hard-coded at this point, and they do fall at the right time such that they reach the target point at the right time, so that they're at the goal position at the right time as per their target time. But this is not really synced up to any music or anything like that at this point. But what this does mean is that we can start capturing input and start judging input. So basically, we can test to see if the user is pressing the arrows at the right time and to see how off are they, so that we can judge that and give that like a perfect rating or a grade or whatever. Also right now, from what you can see, there are no notes that can be held. It's just notes that you can tap. But actually there are held notes in here, notes that you should be holding down. You just can't really see them because there's no feedback here. Actually, there's no feedback in here at all. It's impossible to tell what's a note that should be held or for how long and what isn't. But we'll talk a little bit more about feedback, backing music, timing, and all that stuff throughout this video. So we'll get there. And the reason I'm showing it to you this way is, as I said before, I want to show you like what does a feature look like at its very inception. You know, if you're not a game developer, maybe you've not seen this kind of stuff before. But you know, this is the seed. This is like the beginning, right, of how a feature starts, and it just sort of blossoms from here. So one of the key things about karaoke is that people make mistakes. This is part of karaoke. It's what makes karaoke fun. You don't have to be an amazing singer to have a good time at karaoke. It's all about the passion, right? And so one thing that I really wanted to incorporate into this mini game was to actually capture that sort of thing, that people make mistakes when they sing at karaoke. So what I wanted was that there would be a vocal melody line that you're playing along to in the karaoke minigame, and that if you are off, if your timing is off a little bit, then your vocal melody would also go off, depending on how off you are, right? And if you miss by a lot, it gets really bad. And I thought that would just be this really funny touch, an interesting touch to this. I don't think I've actually seen this kind of thing done before. Obviously there is like the Guitar Hero guitar muted notes, so that kind of thing has been done before, but I haven't seen it been done with vocal melody lines before in a rhythm game, so I thought that would be kind of interesting. And I mean, if it has been done before, cool, but regardless, I think this is a really nice touch, and I think it really captures the spirit of karaoke pretty well. But this does create a problem, which is, how do I do that? Okay, now there's a lot of different ways that I can do it, and I played around with it in many different ways. One way was to dynamically shift the melody of the vocal line on the fly. So if they're really off, then we would, we could pitch it up and down by some amount, or if they're, just depending on how off they are. But unfortunately, at least within Godot, I couldn't find a solution that A, worked at all, but also B, that wasn't overly restrictive. I don't really necessarily like the procedural nature of changing pitch, because then I have less control over how I want the pitch to be wrong if it ought to be wrong. And so that's kind of what the downside with that kind of approach could be. So what I thought was, well, what if I just make like a backing track? It's just going to be the backing music like you have at karaoke. And then if say for example, I have 3 levels of quality of, timing, input timing, like perfect, good, and bad, for example, then I would just have 3 melody lines that all play at the same time, but only one is audible. And that one that is audible corresponds to the most recent input quality that you got. So if the last key that you did was a perfect rating, you would have the perfect vocal melody line running. If it was a bad, then only the bad melody line would be audible. But all 3 would still be running simultaneously. It's just 2 are muted at the same time. And we just fade between those 2 as we go. I thought that kind of thing would probably work. So I gave this a go, but it turns out that synchronizing separate audio streams is a really hard thing to do. Just hitting play on all of them at the same time on the same frame does not actually guarantee synchronized playback. And even if audio is just a little bit out of sync, it starts to get a little funky. So that's when I was made aware of the audio stream polyphonic class, I guess, in Godot. And a big thanks to username Groud, Gilles Rudier, I think his name is. I'm probably saying it wrong, for making me aware of this. He's actually someone who hangs out on stream sometimes. He's a Godot engine contributor. So big thank you to him for making me aware of this. But what audio stream polyphonic does is it essentially takes a bunch of other audio streams. So in this case, it could be the backing track and the 3 vocal melody lines. It puts them all together in one stream, synchronizes them, and then plays them together, which is exactly what we're looking for here. I felt that maybe there's a little bit less control over each of the individual streams in this particular case, and you had to access them by a stream ID and all these kind of things. It's just the nitty gritty, but it wasn't too hard to work with. And most importantly, I had the ability to affect the volume of each individual stream if I had those streams IDs, which I did. And lo and behold, it worked. Check this out. So this works really, really well. We get the different qualities. You can hear the amazing backing track there with the piano. This is something that my stream watchers probably hear in their sleep at this point. I know I do, but it's just what we're using for the moment to test with. Now, this next part was a really interesting side quest for me. Actually, honestly, it wasn't a side quest at all. It was more like a raid boss. I was actually dreading this thing because of how sort of overwhelming it could have been. And I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, but it was a really, really important step. And it was also a big sort of motivator for me to, get onto this karaoke system early so that I can figure out whether or not I can solve this issue. And if I can't, then just scrap the feature entirely. Spoiler, the feature is there, so we figured it out. And that is that we need some way to create karaoke charts. And these charts are levels, or the placement of the arrows for every song. Okay, we need some way to do that. And at the end of the day, all I really need to make this work in terms of data for the arrows is like what lane an arrow is in. Is it in the left lane, the right lane, whatever? What its start time is and its duration in case it's a held arrow, right? That's all the information we need. Also, maybe some meta information like time signatures for the music and a tempo, right? That's all that we kind of need. And if I had some tool or some way to create or author that kind of information, then I should be good. Now, I could have gone down the rabbit hole of creating my own plugin into Godot with a nice UI that can play back the music that I'm working on, place the arrows, etc. But that would be incredibly time-consuming, error-prone. I'm afraid I would spend a long time working on something like that, and I wanted to find any way I could to possibly avoid going down that path. So I had a bit of a brainwave, okay? Sometimes I even surprise myself, it's not just air under this beanie, okay? I have a copy of FL Studio, which is a music production piece of software, and that's what I used to make the backing track before with the piano, right? It has support for many things, but it also has support for MIDI and a piano roll where you can just draw in what notes you want. That's how I made the piano song from before. And I thought, well, MIDI is just a standard of information with of just event data, like when notes are pressed and when they're not pressed or whatever. What if I could use FL Studio as my user interface so that I could just draw notes where and those notes would just be arrows, okay? And export that as a MIDI. And because MIDI is a standard, there's gotta be some way to import it in, right? FL Studio has all the UI functionalities that I would need, like copy paste, scaling notes. I could put my backing track on another track so I can play it along with the notes. I can play my arrow notes out to see if they're on, in time. There's beat markers. I could snap things in and out. It has everything I would ever need to draw in these arrows to music and to time it well to make iteration really, really easy. And I can even insert MIDI time signature changes and tempo changes in the middle of the song in FL Studio, and those get exported to MIDI as well. If there was only a way I could get the data from FL Studio into my game. So how can I do this? How can I export that data? And my mind immediately turned to Python. That's where my brain immediately went. It's like Python, there has to be a solution using Python. It has to be. There has to be someone, somewhere, that has created a script that parses the MIDI file format into information that can be more easily accessed in Python. And then from there, I could create my own script that would take that output, order it however I wanted, and then pass it over to Godot somehow. Turns out I was right. I found a parser called umidiparser by Herman Paul von Borries. Link in the description below to their GitHub if you want to see it yourself. And that was, I think that was made from microcontrollers in mind, so it's probably read micro MIDI parser, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's this really, really lightweight Python script thingy, and it does exactly what I was hoping it would do. So armed with this, I was able to write my own Python script that extracted what I needed, ordered the data, and output it. And here you can actually see what that output looks like. And so the way that I kind of do this is that I check for the 4 white notes, F4 to B5 in the MIDI file, and I just check for any notes that have been drawn on those notes. And those notes correspond to the arrows in the game, respectively. So F would be the left arrow, and then, yeah, so on. And I can also calculate the arrow hold duration by subtracting the time from the note on event, so when the note gets pressed down, from when the note gets released, so that's a note off event. So if I subtract note on from note off, I get the duration of the note. I also catch any tempo and time signature changes along the way so that I can process that later as well if need be. I tried it out. I got the script, I got the output, I outputted it to a file, I kind of just hard-coded the output into the game to see, how does my game deal with this data that the Python script outputted. And it actually worked first try perfectly. And I didn't capture the moment this happened, but I immediately turned on OBS. I was in the moment, and I recorded my reaction there. So I'll play a little bit of that clip for you here. Okay, so what happened was I just loaded the converted MIDI data from FL Studio and plugged it into the actual minigame, karaoke minigame for the first time. And one thing I was curious about was is everything gonna line up, whatever. And it was really, really, really cool. So there's still no feedback on the karaoke system or anything like that, but you'll see. Okay, we'll play. It's in time. Perfectly. Oh, it was so cool. And then now I'm actually playing along with the melody. There's still no feedback on the... And there's the... when you mess up, the vocal melody goes off. No! Even though there's still no feedback on the buttons and the inputs and stuff like that, the fact that the arrows are lining up with the melody line and you press it at the same time, everything is in time, this is already a massive, massive step forward. It already it feels like a huge step forward. Actually incredible. I was really proud of that moment. And I don't know, it's kind of fun. I'm having fun there. So it's a nice little clip. And so from that point, I was able to make a little plugin over in Godot that allows me to choose a MIDI file that I want to convert. It executes the Python script automatically, grabs the output from Python, maps that to a karaoke chart Godot resource type that I made, which is just basically a data type that I've defined for myself, that a data format basically for my karaoke charts. and then it saves that to my hard drive, and that's it. So now I have this tiny little plugin. It sits down the bottom of my Godot, down there, chart importer, and I can just kind of import stuff. I can output the data to see if there's any issues. Yeah, and it just kind of works. It's really quick and it's really, really easy. So the workflow is just simply make changes in FL Studio, export MIDI, import to Godot, done. Nice. And so this got me thinking, one question I actually get asked often is, what programming language should I learn? I get this asked all the time. And actually, this is a great example of what my answer usually is. And it is usually whatever you like, whatever you want to. If you haven't gotten started, just start anywhere, because at your stage, it doesn't matter too much. Just learn how to, what programming is like. But most importantly, learn as many as you can, because having the confidence and ability to dive into any language and work out, whatever you need to do is a valuable asset in any game or software development environment. And that brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Zenva. If you're excited about game development in Godot 4 or creating tools using Python, you've got to check out Zenva Academy. They offer easy to follow courses that are ideal for beginners and intermediate level developers that are looking for structured learning pathways. What's awesome about Zenva is how they make learning fun and practical. You get professional video tutorials, written lessons, and interactive quizzes. Plus, you'll work on real projects building games in different genres like open world, RPGs, and FPS. Zenva isn't just about Godot. They have courses on Python, Unity, Unreal, and other tools. With one subscription, including a 7-day free trial, you unlock 250 courses and 32 learning pathways. And here's a special deal. Use the link in the description for an extra 20% off the first year of your annual Zenva subscription on top of any existing site discounts. That's a significant saving for a world of game development knowledge, and this special offer is only valid to the first 50 subscribers. So if you're ready to dive into Godot 4 or any other game development areas, Zenva is the place to be. So grab this offer and start your game development adventures today. Thanks, Zenva, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to some more karaoke. The next thing that I wanted to focus on a little bit was feedback. And feedback in this case is sound effects, visual effects, things like that, that make the game feel like what it's supposed to feel like. And so far, the game has been lacking all of that feedback, and it feels really, really empty, and it's kind of weird. So, the two reasons that I wanted to focus on feedback, even though I'm really early in development, is one, I wanted the minigame to kind of feel more like a game. That's one thing. But then the other thing is that there's actually a lot of system-related work that needs to be done whenever you're affecting the flow of a game. So that could be animations starting and stopping. How do we get into the karaoke minigame? Are there animations before and after? If you want to run certain animations or sound effects while the minigame is going, what do you do in these cases? So actually covering some of those things to make sure that your system is rigorous enough to support those cases, I think is actually pretty decent. It's important not to go too far with this too early, because you might want to make changes later. But I think doing some of the feedback was actually a good idea. So that's why I embarked on the feedback stuff. So let's talk about what feedback I worked on for the karaoke minigame. So first things first, a visual overhaul. As you can see here, there's now a backing panel and a bass panel for this. Held notes now actually have shafts and little nubs at the end of them as well, so that they indicate that they are notes that should be held and for how long they should be held. There's an animation for when the game now starts and when it ends, so the karaoke board slides in, a little bounce in there as well, feels kind of nice, and then it slides away when it's done, giving control back to the player. There are now sound effects and animations on the arrows when input is received. This really hammers home that the game received the user's input, and it really, you can sort of feel that your input is being registered. And the sound effects also change based on the quality of your hit. This basically helps you sort of feel your misses or feel your hits. You know what I mean? I've also added quality text next to it as well. Again, you're not really supposed to be looking over there and seeing it, but you can see that's more feedback that animates in, so you can see things were registered. The text have different colors so that you can sort of see in the corner of your eye, okay, that was green, so that was a good, that was yellow, so it was a perfect, that kind of thing. One other thing that I added were these beat markers as well, which help visualize where upcoming arrows lie with respect to the beats of the music, if that makes sense. It also highlights the first beat of every bar as well, and this takes into account any time signature changes that happens in the beginning of the song or during the song. And so with these additions, I think that the game feels much more responsive and more complete. I feel like I can now give this to anyone, and they will know exactly what they're doing and what they're supposed to do and whether or not they're doing it right. I think anyone would know immediately. There are arrows on the screen, there's music playing, like it's pretty obvious, right? And I think that's a great point to be at. The final couple things that I wanted to work on was get some base support for a minigame state within my game. So this minigame is all well and good in a vacuum, but the game exists as part of another game. The main game, right? And which means the main game can have multiple states. It can be paused, could be loading, there could be a cutscene playing, could just be in regular active state, whatever, right? So minigame needs to be a state as well. And that sort of means that if the game is in minigame state, then like the input for other states shouldn't be affecting the game. We should just be in minigame mode, and the minigame should be in control of the game until that state gets returned back to a cutscene or the main active state. So we have that minigame state added as well now. And the last thing that I did as well was that I wanted to tie the minigame into the cutscene system that I have. So this is making sure that those systems work well together, because if you can imagine, it may make sense that like if you're talking to someone and they ask you if you want to sing a song at karaoke, and then you play, you know, then you play karaoke, and then after the minigame is done, we return back to the previous cutscene, and maybe even passing on your karaoke score data, which we also have, back to the cutscene so that they can do something. Maybe they say, hey, that was trash, you know, or hey, that was really good. Maybe that's part of a quest system and you need to score a certain amount in order to proceed, right? These kind of things need to work well together as well. And fortunately, it was quite easy for me to extend my cutscene system to also include minigame support for the karaoke, at least. The other thing I really like about this is that now the karaoke system feels grounded in the world. It's not like a debug button that I push to start, you know what I mean? So that's kind of nice. It's just good to see how that feels all together as one game. Lastly, I want to go over some things that are left to do. There's only a couple things left, so I would like a song selection menu so that, you know, you can choose what song you want to sing. I want the ability to be able to pause and resume in the middle of the game, but also pause and quit the minigame. I would like that as well. I'd also like some kind of like score display screen at the end as well. So those would be things that would be really good, and I'm looking to tie those up in the coming week or so. Okay, so if you've made it this far, that's all we're going to be covering today, but I did promise you a special surprise at the end of this video, and something a little special. You know, it'll be a song that's a little bit more fleshed out, with a bit more of a difficult chart as well in the minigame, so you can see all of that sort of coming together, okay? Something special for those of you who made it this far. So if you enjoyed the video, do consider liking it, consider subscribing if you want to see more content. You can support the channel by joining here on YouTube, or by checking out the Twitch and maybe subbing there, but there's also a Coffee account if you want to subscribe there too. I think there's still some exclusive rewards available there still if you're interested in that. No pressure though. And without further ado, your little gift, your little prize for making it this far. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a lovely week. Enjoy the demo. Bye.